Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. This is episode 10 of season 2, and I was doing the math today, Jeremy, and I think you're like 37 in total since August.
So a big first season.
Big old first season. We're going to see how far this one goes. I think I might take this one into like June and then take a break for a couple weeks and then come back for season 3. But Jeremy Sheppard, Mr. Guitar Hunter himself, is here.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you so much for making the time, man. I really appreciate this. I've been looking forward to hanging out and talking to you. So I am so curious for all my guests about when was the first moment you kind of had music enter your soul, like where you were like,
yeah,
I want to play guitar, or I want to play piano, or I want to play the sousaphone, like whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I was super into wrestling. And so all through middle school, that was like my thing, was wrestling. And then I played a little bit of football, but that wasn't my thing. Lots of baseball. But I was diagnosed with a heart condition when I was 12. And the doctors immediately said like, hey, like no more cardio, no more gym. You can't do anything. So it was like walking the track while people are playing sports and stuff.
Man.
And, yeah, so it was rough. So my oldest brother, had a guitar that he kind of played, but not really. And, so at one point it's just kind of sitting around the house, and I picked it up, and within a couple minutes I figured out, it's a Chili Peppers song, that da 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 da. Is it Scar Tissue or Other Side? It's Other Side. And that song like lit my brain on fire, that I was like, holy cow, like this is so fun. And I just got lost. Like I just went full force into guitar, and I'd played like band, and music had come pretty naturally, like recorder. And, I did get kicked out of the middle school band for being 8th chair 3 years in a row.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. I was McGahkeysville's worst alto sax player.
Oh my God.
But guitar just made sense. Like I just jumped in, and so I got super into like, I had a split kind of path of like, my youth pastor taught me how to play most chords and stuff, but then I was also playing in like every Blink-182 style band I could, just playing in tons of punk rock bands.
Nice. So that was like the main. So the Chili Peppers were the main launch pad then for you.
I think so. It was like Chili Peppers, and like I grew up in a really cool, like folky, lots of music in the house. My mom played guitar a little bit, and so she loved Neil Young. So like Neil Young was my first, like, I want to play guitar and I want to play like Neil Young, which is weird that I jumped immediately into punk rock out of that.
Well, what era is this? Like, so punk rock, we're talking, I mean, is this in the like early 2000s, late 90s?
Yeah. So this is like 99, 2000. Yeah. Okay. It was right when Blink-182, I think 2001 is when I really took guitar seriously.
Okay.
And started a band and started playing shows and started booking shows.
Okay. And so when you're a young buck learning this stuff, I mean, were you listening to, besides like Neil Young and the punk stuff? So, because I grew up, and I mean, I was 11 years old when Pearl Jam's 10 came out.
Okay.
So like when Nevermind and 10 and all those albums dropped, Bad Motorfinger, all that stuff, I was like in that very, kind of middle schooly kind of, mode, that's when you're like, I think the biggest sponge you are for music.
I think so.
So was it around that time?
So yeah, it was. I immediately got super into. Did you ever go to Mac Rock in Harrisonburg? Did you grow up in Maryland, or are you from somewhere else?
No, yeah, I grew up in Bel Air, but I live outside. I live north of Baltimore now. Gotcha.
So the music scene here in Harrisonburg, there's James Madison University, and then there's a music festival that's always happened called Mac Rock, which was the Mid-Atlantic College Radio something conference.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
So I grew up seeing like I saw Converge when I was 12. And they played at Mac Rock. I saw like Mastodon. But that's later on. Like before that, it was like I was seeing Under Oath and Good Charlotte when when they'd play. Like I saw Under Oath for $2. And they played to like 100 people. And so that's the scene I came in. So it's more like pop punk and post punk kind of stuff, like whatever you'd call that, indie DIY kind of scene. But that's always where, like, I didn't spend much time learning other people's music the first couple of years. Like I'd go see bands and I'd be super stoked, and then I'd go write music with friends, but we would never like, we thought covers were like not for us. So we would,
that's punk rock.
Yeah. It's like DIY, like just make your own flyers, make your own shirts. Mm-hmm. We made a music venue. Like it was this like redneck pirate themed Chuck E. Cheese ripoff in our hometown. And we found that they had a capacity of 800 people and no one's ever in there. So we talked to the guy. We're like, hey, could we book shows here? And he's like, if you pay me $150, you can have the place all night. It's like, holy cow. So we would get that. And so one of the craziest shows I ever booked, I booked Darkest Hour. I booked Darkest Hour a handful of times, but we booked Darkest Hour and they played in between songs. It would just like the music would die down. You'd hear all the arcade games and people were in the ball pit. Like there's a ball pit beside it. And it's just so fun.
Dude, look at you as a young entrepreneur. Like that's crazy.
Yeah. I got tired of washing dishes. So I started booking bands. That seemed more fun.
So was that like kind of a bigger part of your life at that time? Like music, like you actually playing and gigging, wasn't it? But that was it? Like the music business side?
So I was in a band called Swank and we played like 150 shows, but it was like very much like Blink-182, Sum 41, AFI, The Used. It started morphing more into into like a hardcore band. Cause our scene had a ton of like, a ton of hardcore, but yeah. So towards the end of that band broke up. I started a death metal band because I was really into At the Gates and like shreddy stuff. But I found that it was easier. There's a lot to that. But I basically just stopped. I found bands that I wanted to hear. And like, it's if I want to drive 5 hours to Philadelphia, I can see them. Or I can I can get like 300 people in my hometown to see them. I see them for free. And then, like everybody else gets to see them. So that was like around 16, I started booking a lot of shows. And I did that until I was like 19 or so. And then I started working at a guitar shop.
Man, that's crazy. My buddy went to JMU. So I was down there. I saw Widespread Panic, I think in the gym, like the arena or whatever it is at JMU. And that was so fun. What's the strangest show that you've been to that was like weird, like wasn't a lot of money, and you now looking back at it, you can't believe you were at that show to see that band?
I saw Mastodon 3 days before their press release that they signed to Metal Blade, and that they were putting out Leviathan. So we saw that. Yeah, it was $12. It was at the plate at Captain T's with the ball pit. It was nuts. Dude, I'll have to send you some pictures. It's like,
oh my god.
It's like there's a paintball arena behind it. So like between songs, also you'd hear like pop, 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 and you.
Jeremy, that's the best story I've heard all day, man.
Dude, it's just like straight hillbilly stuff.
Oh, dude, man, what's strange is like a lot of the colleges, like it's so good to live in a town that's a college town.
Seriously.
Because you get all these great acts coming through. Like I remember when I was young, I was dating this girl who was going to Loyola University around Baltimore.
Okay.
And I was at Salisbury University at that time. And I remember coming up and Ben Folds 5 and Train was playing together in like the auditorium. And it was like a gym, like picture a high school gym kind of thing.
Yeah.
They put a stage in there. And this is like, will go down in infamy to me. It was like Ben Folds 5 is the loudest show I've ever been to in my life.
Really? That's amazing.
Hands down, the loudest show. And I was like, I cannot believe the amount of sound that is coming off of that stage right now. Seriously. And I've seen Tedeschi Trucks. That band's 9 people. It's like there's never been a show that will compete volume wise with that band.
So most of our shows were in basements. And so it's like probably similar to where you are, like limestone basements, like cut into the rock in the ground. And then it's people with full stacks and they're running them on 8 and 9. And like people are going to the bathroom to get toilet paper to squish in their ear.
Those are good times.
Dude, I think seeing Baroness or Misery Index. Misery Index is from Baltimore, but they're like straight crazy death metal.
I didn't go into those
play like full stacks. Like Baroness is the loudest band I've ever heard in my life. And it was like, 8 feet away, a full stack, and just like, yeah. And I needless to say, I have a little bit of hearing damage. So I got to use hearing protection these days.
Yeah, me too, man. As we get older, we want to be able to hear our kids call out to us.
Yeah.
What was Jeremy's first guitar rig?
Oh, my first electric guitar was an Austin Strat, just like a red kind of Chinese knockoff. But I quickly traded that. I traded right away. And the guitar I traded to, because I loved the Mighty Mighty Bosstones. I don't know why I connect those two in my brain, but I traded for a Dan Electro, like a 59 reissue with lipstick pickups, because I wanted to do that like real jangly, like high clean kind of stuff.
Yeah, man.
And then I actually just bought the first amp that I had. I found one for $80, and it's a Crate GFX 212. So it's 120 watts, 212s, and it's like surprisingly doesn't sound terrible. Like I got it last week. I'm going to make a video on it, and it's just, yeah, it immediately reminded me of songs that I'd totally forgotten, which I do think is like, we should all get old gear, like get some of our old stuff.
Dude, that doesn't surprise me. I feel like you just must have that DNA in you. Like you're talking about like trading out a guitar right away. You're just like, nope, on to the next thing kind of thing. So my mom was a lunch lady. And then in the summers, she ran a thrift shop. And so like I grew up like yard sailing and thrifting and finding stuff. And so negotiation and just finding cool stuff that nobody knows about has just been pretty natural to, I don't know, who I am. That's a skill set, man. Like you have to have, there's part of you that has to love the game to be able to have the patience to do the game, to play the game. You know what I mean? And I don't, have you ever had something that's like, do you ever get seller's remorse? Or are you just like, meh?
There are two guitars that I wish I wouldn't have sold. So one was it was a 61 Gibson J50, and I bought it right before I got married, and I had it for a long time. I had it for 12 years. And so I grew up in Virginia, and then we moved after I finished school, because I went to school to be a teacher. I majored in special education and then found no teaching jobs in Virginia. We moved to Louisiana, where my wife is from, no teaching gigs. Moved there. I ended up getting into business development in a medical clinic, and then went into a sales gig in health and safety. And, but being in, full commission, we had 2 little kids, and oil and gas, like the price of oil dropped in 2016. And so I went like 6 months making like a couple $100 a month. And so it was just like, we have to sell everything that's not nailed down. So I ended up selling my J50, and I sold it for $2,100. Like it was, that's a guitar I really miss. And then the other one I sold at the same time was, it was a 2012 D35 from Martin. And it was a gift that the guy that I worked for at the guitar shop here in Virginia, I worked for him for 7 years. At the end of it, right after I got married, he was like, hey, like, thanks for working so hard for me for all these years. Pick out any guitar in the shop you want. You can have it. And so I picked out a D35, and I loved that guitar. And I sold that one the same kind of situation of like, well, I have a wife and kids and responsibilities, and I'm a grown up. And so, yeah.
Yeah. That kind of ties into what you were talking about in your Instagram live today, but how do you support yourself in this business? Like how do you stay afloat and do what you love to do? And like, I find it really, I really wanted to talk to you about, because I'm not like a guitar aficionado. Like I play them, I know what I like.
Yeah.
I don't know the history behind stuff as much as I would like to know. So like, I was curious about talking to you about just, first of all, like, how did you get into wanting to get on the road for guitars? And like, where do you find, because I remember the first video I saw of yours and I was like, I like this guy already. And it was like a rant video about reverb.
Oh no. Yeah.
But I liked it though, because you were right. Like, it's like this industry is too slimy already in certain ways, but like, we don't have to be slimy about gear. We don't have to be slimy about like, selling or buying, purchasing gear, and even if it's through Reverb or wherever it's from, I identified with what you were talking about. Because I mean, I've had issues. I've had people, we all have had stories, but like, what did you like? When were you like, okay? Because I know you said something about you had a storefront at some point, right?
Yeah.
Tell me that story, because I don't know that story.
So we had moved to Louisiana. I started buying a bunch of guitars and just like finding cooler stuff. I mean, like, however cool Craigslist is wherever you are, it is not New Orleans. Like, New Orleans is just, there's thousands of things coming on every day. And it's like original 58, White Falcon, or like an old J45 is just such cool stuff. So we moved down there. I'm covering 3 states doing sales stuff. And I'd always stop in and find little guitar shops, and I got to know people, and they would then let me know when cool stuff came in. Then I would schedule sales calls. Like, I got to go to Shreveport for a couple days. I might sell something here, but I also get a chance to buy a 51 D21, or just find cool guitars. Then as we were planted and like in our community in Louisiana, like, it was just, everyone knew that I love guitars. And so when they'd find old guitars in attics or closets, they'd call me and ask what they were. And then it got to where they would ask me if I could sell them for them. And then it just snowballed into, as people, there were 3 different widows that I ended up getting put in touch with, that their husbands had, one small, a medium, and then a very large guitar collection. And they just said, hey, like, we need help. Can you take some time? And I was able to swap my time a bit from being on the road and doing sales into, I can take everything out of this warehouse. I can inventory it. I can sell it for you. I'll keep track of everything. And then you get this %. I get this %. I'll handle all the shipping and all the business of it. And so that just snowballed and grew. And it got to a place where it was way more than we could have in our house. And I was renting an office downtown, and there was an office next to me open. So I asked my landlord, hey, can I just rent that? And originally it was like, I need space to like take photos and just sell and pack stuff. But then it got to where, I mean, it's close to New Orleans. It's cool. There's tons of foot traffic. And I started getting people that heard about what I was doing in the community. They started coming by. And then I was like, well, if I'm doing this much business, I probably am a business. So I might make this thing legit. And so I went to the city and got everything going. And, but yeah, so I opened a small shop. I had like 17 hooks and sold pedals. A friend of mine makes amazing pedals. He stopped making them for a couple of years. You ever heard of Music Works? Nope. Hang on. Rock Works. No. RAWK. So he makes this pedal called the Eliora. It's kind of a Klon type thing, and it's very cool. And so I was his first dealer, and I sold hundreds of those. Yeah, so the shop was running, but I mean, so I just did a video about why it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. And basically it was that I still had a full-time job that I loved. And I was like, so I couldn't ever be there all the time. And then I ended up hiring my friend Bo works at Carter Vintage now. And it was awesome. But it's owning a business is hard. And yeah, I think, it's cash flow is the main reason that it didn't work out. But I think the other thing is, and this is just guitar wisdom in general, which is like, don't ever need it. Like, don't ever and that's the biggest problem is, that's what got me in trouble with Reverb. Because when Reverb stops backing up sellers and you need the money, like I'm moving across the country and Reverb 4 guitars in a row, they side with the seller, but I can document that I said these things were wrong and people just didn't read the descriptions. And now you want me to pay them back plus shipping both ways and eat fees. Like, that doesn't work. So that's what precipitated Reverb at the end of it. So at that point, I'd closed the shop and I was liquidating. I was selling cool old stuff, like a 60s 345, a 45 Gibson L7, a 69 SG. I mean, like legit cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, Reverb really changed like 5 years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although I will say, one time I was selling the Deja Vibe, the full tone Deja Vibe. I sold that I sold that before the controversy.
Can't sell that now. I guess.
Oh yeah. But you know that it didn't show up for some reason to this guy's place. And then it did like the next day. So it was, but they were good between both parties. But that was the only time I ever had a problem pop up. But like, but I when I saw that video years ago when you did that, I was like, I like this guy. He seems like a good dude, like a good-hearted dude. And it, you know, if you're in a business like this and you have a storefront, you know, first of all, at some point, maybe I need to come down and you and I need to take a trip down to New Orleans, because I would love to go check out some stuff down there and purchase some stuff. Because I'm always into, you know, looking for a cool deal, and especially on like old amps and stuff like that. That's hard to come by, and it's not in this market. Baltimore does not have that. I
have so many old amps back here, so you got to come hang.
Mm-hmm.
Because I looked, we're not far. We're like 2 hours or something.
No, we are not far. Totally. But I wanted to talk to you about my Taylor. So so this guitar is a guitar that I actually got at Guitar Center in Towson, Maryland.
Oh, cool.
And it was used.
Is that a cedar top?
It is. Yeah. Yep. And it has the old school Fishman system. So this is the thing. I want you to educate me about this guitar, because when I was in there one day and I was in the market for a new acoustic. Okay. Yep. And this thing, I got this thing for $1,600 used.
That's good.
And it was already tuned to D standard. So like, you know, there's like this stigma that like Martins are cannons and Taylors are thin and whatever. And I was like, when I strummed it, I was like, oh, that sounds so good. Like, so I bought it. And I've had this thing since probably 2004, 2005, somewhere around there. I bought it
with that preamp. It's probably early 2000s. What's the serial?
Do you want the last three numbers, or is that help?
I think it's the first four, right?
Oh, it's 2000.
Yeah. So it was made in 2000. Those Taylors are super easy. But yeah, does it have a finger joint on the back where the headstock and the neck join?
I don't think so. Can you see?
I can't. But when you look at it, do you see like wood grain?
Oh yeah. Yep. I see the joint. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because I have back here. This is a 98. This is a 412.
Okay.
But this one has a solid neck. So the whole neck is one piece of wood. It still has two sides on the end of the headstock. But somewhere between like 98 and 2000 is when they moved to that joint, which is a much better joint. It's much stronger, and it's just makes it to where you can get more guitars out of less wood, which I think that's Taylor's ethos, is like make great guitars and don't be wasteful.
Yeah, which I can get behind. But it has such a gorgeous back on it, and like I don't know, man. It's been such a great instrument for me, like night after night after night after night. But what I like about this guitar is it plays like an electric. Like if you're an electric player and you hop on these and you're used to that instrument, like an electric guitar, like a Strat or something, this just felt more comfortable to me. Yeah, because I have an uncle who is a bluegrass musician. He plays resonator. He plays dobro.
Oh, cool.
And I remember when I was looking at acoustics, he like took me. There's a place called Appalachian Bluegrass near me that's in like Catonsville, Maryland, and they have a bunch of high end stuff, Collins and all that stuff.
Ooh.
And this was years ago before Collins and all that, but like he had me there, and had me looking at Martins and old Guilds and stuff, and I was like, oh, all these are great.
I don't think you'd love old Guilds. They got big old necks.
I didn't like it. No. But regardless, this instrument, at one point I was like close to selling it, because I was like, should I upgrade to a newer Taylor, or because what's the whole deal with the whole Martin Taylor war? Because it's not between them, it's people.
No, I don't think they care.
No.
The only time I think that they're like taking shots at each other is like, so when Martin launched that, whatever, the GCP, the Grand Performing series, they have all these like zigzaggy pick guards. It's like a Martin that's definitely made to be like a Taylor. I think the new 13 series is the same kind of thing. Like they're going for super playable. But I think Taylor and Martin are like, so this is one of my favorite things to talk about is like, you can see the ethos of their brand play out in such specific ways, like their beliefs about the world. And so Taylor is constantly saying that the best guitar is still out there. And so I do think like they're committed to innovation. And so there is something like, you're right to say like, maybe I should get a new one. Maybe I should think about something newer. Where in Martin language, newer isn't necessarily like they're pretty similar. And it's kind of like the newer you get, the older they seem to feel and play and look, like, but I think Martin is on the other side of saying that they have this pedigree and tradition of making some of the best and most important guitars ever in history. But I think they wear it pretty lightly compared to Gibson, where Gibson kind of says like, you dummies are so lucky we're still making these guitars.
We can get into that a little bit if you want. I know you've been talking about it a lot lately, but
yeah. But I think Martin and Taylor, I think they are just like, you're not going to get a lot of crossover. Like I'm pretty rare, I think, in that I think I can see and appreciate both. My neighbor across the street is this like, he's a dump truck driver, works at the quarry. He's the loudest talker I've ever heard. I don't know why I'm saying any of this. It's not helpful other than just, but he plays, he'll just yell at me from his porch like, "Hey Jeremy, I got a new guitar." And I'll come over and he just picked up a 73 D28. And he's like, "This is the loudest, greatest bluegrass guitar. It almost is as good as my other one." And then he pulls out a Taylor 810. And you're like, he's like one of the only people I know. And then he has that and then a 12 string. It's interesting. I don't think it's from the brands. I think we've inherited a lot of opinions. That's guitar culture in a nutshell. You hold an opinion and you assume it's true. Like Rosewood has to be better than mahogany because it's more expensive, which is true. Yeah.
It's an interesting concept to like get into those wars about like tone woods with people. Cause I'm like, do you like it?
Yeah.
If you don't, then don't play it. Don't use it. Don't buy it. Like get something else that you like the sound of, because one of my professors at Berkeley had a pre-war Martin.
Oh, cool.
And he brought that to a class. The class was small. It was a songwriting guitar class. So it was like acoustic instruments. He also plays fiddle. So he's like a killing fiddle player, also a great guitar player. And he was like, after class, he's like, "Hey, check this out." And like, he didn't play that during class. He saved it for me afterwards because I was close with him. And just playing that thing, man, you could feel like it was like, it was projected like crazy, and it felt like a cannon like against your chest.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that my uncle is like aware of, because like he did gigs with Scruggs and Flats and stuff back in the day. Oh, wow. So like he's kind of been around the place and he's played some instruments and had his hands on it. But I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna buy a pre-war Martin. Are you talking about? Like, this is what I can afford, man. Like $1,600 was a lot for me in 2005.
No, you don't need to spend. Yeah, you don't need to spend. Like, if you'd ever want to move over there, like get a D28 since 2012 when they did the reimagined. They are as good as they ever have been, and you can find them for $1,500-$1,600.
Yeah,
you're gonna look a long time before you get them at that price.
Right.
But I think like with yours, the only thing that you would really update. Well, first, I think a cedar top and rosewood back and sides and a Taylor in a 14 size. That is my favorite. Like of all Taylors, that's my favorite setup because I think it just sounds super loud and crispy, and I mean it's a wonderful setup. The only thing that people don't typically like on your guitar is the Fishman preamp because it can sound a little quacky, but I think also like it's interesting because that's the way acoustic guitars sounded, especially if you went to live shows. So there is a high nostalgia factor in having that sounding pickup. And so, I mean that's the only thing that you could swap out, but they do make the expression system. If you would want to move to like the newest, latest, greatest Taylor system, they have them where you can put them in the preamp spot. And so you take out the preamp and the pickup, and then they would add their, the piezo thing. But I think you're dead on. Like, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Like, don't sell
like
it on needing something new.
No, yeah. I mean, I like it, and I bought one of those baby Taylors years ago, the GS Mini or whatever it is. That's the Koa, and
those are awesome.
When I plugged that in, man, I had a fly gig, and I was like, I just want to take something that's gonna fly, for an acoustic gig, and I was shocked at how amazing that thing's. It's got so much low end. Like, I was really impressed by that thing, man.
Dude, those are like, because that's my favorite part of an acoustic guitar with a good pickup is when you get that like full boom, like it changes how you play and you can be more rhythmic. I think the right pickup in a guitar like totally opens it up and makes you a better musician.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, man. Well, let me ask you, so I want to get into the art of flipping with you a little bit too. But before we go there, since we're on the topic of guitars, and you're not just an acoustic guy, like you know a lot about all this stuff. So what are your thoughts on all like the S style, T style companies, and like who you think's doing it best? Because I mean, I'll be upfront. I'm a huge Sir fan. I have 3 of them. And the story behind that, quick story behind that, is that I had a PRS. I sold it. I was sitting on like $2,400 in my pocket. I was in LA, and I was like going to a bunch of different shops looking for something that might just show up and have like a light shining on it. And nothing did, but I did play some stuff in the Mesa Boogie store. I picked up a Nash.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, and then I was like, sir, I've heard of them. And I swear to you, Jeremy, it felt like someone measured my hand. Like the way that Sir necks are, it just felt right. But like, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all the SPP style.
Yeah. I think that there is a ton of space. I think there's room for all these like new cool guitar companies. And I love the companies that get to play what if, because that's the thing is like Fender. I mean, just recently Fender's been able to lean into that with the like Parallel Universe and the Ventera. But forever they've been like, well, you can't put a Tele bridge on a Strat body, like, because people are, but at the same time, like, well, we made them, like, we can do whatever we want. But I love that component. That's what first like got me hooked on like, and these aren't like S types or T types, but like Built. I think I will drool over every guitar made by Built. I just think they're so cool. My friend Evan in New Orleans we made a bunch of guitars together. He actually, other side. So he made this one, I call this the Razzmatazz-Caster. It's a purple sparkle. I'm looking the wrong way.
Get it, man. Grab it. Yeah.
So this is one that he and I built together. So it's purple.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Sparkle. And one thing this is completely my fault. This, like, I was like, let's do something like this. And I kind of drew this out. And then years later, Cower Guitars actually on Instagram, they're like, is that one of our guitars? And I was like, oh no. Like I realized like just my brain hung on to it. And, but anyway, I just finished, this guitar still isn't totally finished. But it has fought me every single step of the way in the 5-year process of making it. But I want to come back to your question of, so I love Nash. I have a Nash Tele back there. It's throwing me off because I'm like mirrored.
Yeah.
But I have a Nash T52, a heavy relic that I got in a trade. I don't think I would have purchased that guitar necessarily, but it was a friend of mine and the price was right for us to trade. This one is also, it's the first guitar I've ever owned that's been plecked. And so I'm like, it plays like a dream. But knowing old guitars and seeing relic guitars, I know like there are certain things where I'm like, it's just a little cheesy. Like and there are ones that do them really well, but I think with these, like Nash doesn't have great hardware. They're kind of using the same all part stuff as everybody else. And then they kind of relic. And anyway, I don't want to be too publicly anti-Nash, especially when I'm trying to sell.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's also like that's a stigma too. Like some people are like, don't relic my guitar, blah blah blah. And like some people are like, oh, it's super cool. And if it's done right, I think I'm all right with it.
Yeah, but isn't it crazy? So I was texting, well, I was messaging Rhett the other day because he has that video about recording his amp. And did you see how he burned the hole in the front of the girl cloth?
I saw something about like, yeah, that's a story. We can talk about that, but I didn't watch that yet.
So he's using a flashlight to like spot the cone to put the mic, and it just got too hot and burned a hole through the grill cloth.
What?
Yeah.
The flashlight?
Yeah, it must have been some intense LED flashlight thing.
It sure wasn't a lightsaber?
Yeah, the green laser went right through the speaker too. But it's funny. So you have like new minty, brand new guitars and heavy relic guitars, but no one wants to live in that no man's land of like the first couple dings, like that first time you stand up and you hit it on a table or you hit the headstock on something. Like my American Strat, I hit it. I have a concrete wall over here. I like a week into owning it. I like leaned forward and it like swung forward and just the front of the headstock just hit against the concrete wall.
Oh man.
And no one will ever see it. And it's fine. I'm going to have that guitar forever, but it just, it's just one of those like, dang it. I wish I would have, but yeah. So other companies, so I love Sir. I've played a handful and I think they're monsters. I love that they're kind of like a riff on a thing you know and trust. Like it's a Strat style thing. It's a Tele style thing, but it's better. It's got a different carve. It's got I love like, yeah, it feels like a food kind of thing to me where you're like, it's that idea, like it's chili or, in Louisiana, it's jambalaya, but it's like this sausage from, like grass-fed beef. And, like you just, all of the constituent parts become the best that they can be. I think that's a total win. I think it also gives guitar players a place to go to find new tones, find new inspiration, to express themselves. I think there's room because there's so many new guitar players coming in right now, which is awesome. And that also means that they're probably freeing up some Mexican Strats and Teles and Epiphones, and like there's some stuff coming into the used market that would be good for younger players.
Yeah, have you ever, like, I put this on my Instagram the other day, and I think you participated, but like the difference between exotic and Sir.
Oh yeah.
Have you played an exotic like S style or T style? Okay. I'm really curious about them. It's funny because first of all, they look great. Well, so does, my Sirs look great too, but like they do a pretty good job of relicking their instruments. But I so want a Burgundy Mist Strat. So want a Burgundy Mist. Like that's, if there's one thing I've been lusting after for the past 3 years, like one of them was on Reverb. It was dope. It was an HSS, and it was Burgundy, and it was lightly distressed. And I was like, that thing is I don't even care how it plays. Like I'll get it plecked or I'll fix whatever. The neck was like a nice roasted maple neck on it. It was cool. Gorgeous guitar. But so there's exotic, there's Sir, there's Nash, there's SVL in UK. Like I don't know anything about those guitars. I just started talking to Simon about getting him on the show.
Oh, cool.
And I know Matt Schofield plays those and loves them. Yeah. But like, what other companies are doing it? Like doing
MJT, which they're not on the same level at all, but they're like, we'll buy Warmoth bodies and necks, we'll relic them, and we'll get them together, and they're at a different price point. They're like $1,000. Mm-hmm. That's what a friend of mine here in town, he has a Blackguard, and it's like, for most people, you'd be like, that's a really old Fender Telecaster, because that's what it says, and it looks like that. And it's not until nerds like me show up, and I'm like, oh, the radius on the radius on the level isn't right, or that chamfer on the edge, or
Oh man.
Yeah. Oh, one of your questions earlier, like how did I learn, or how did I get like to know what I know?
Yeah.
I think working in a guitar shop was the most helpful, and working for a guy who wanted me to know. He didn't want to answer questions. He didn't like people. And so he would just give me books to read, and just like, he'd be like, hey, look at this guitar. Tell me everything you can see about it. And then I'd tell him, and he'd be like, oh, well, you missed this, you missed that. They changed the neck pickup. And, it's a lot of like intuition, but it's also like, man, my brain, like I'm just, and I was talking about this with Zach earlier today. Like I have to be really careful what things I let myself care about, because if I get into a thing, like my wife says, like my philosophy is anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And so like, the same thing, like with my YouTube channel now, like I'm so deep into cameras. Like I'm now like getting so nerdy on like old cameras and what makes things great. And yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also just like one thing that you did, I think is totally the right thing. Whenever you see a cool guitar, work up the courage to ask to play it or see it or get close to it and look at it. And yeah, and I've just loved Martin guitars pretty much my whole life. And so like every Martin, I'm like, what is that? Tell me about that. Can I see it? How long do you have it? Where'd you get it? Do you,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just, yeah, looking at, it's that Leslie Knope quote, like pet every dog.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have a little bit of hunger to do that stuff too. Like, it's like you seem like the kind of guy who's like, I'm a smart dude. I'm going to look into the stuff. I'm going to learn about it so I can intelligently talk to people about it. And that's what's great about your channel, is like you're bringing people together over something that we all love, which is the guitar first and foremost. But like, you're also educating people so we don't make stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's important because I don't know, like, what is the art of flipping? I mean, it's like, like when do you know you have a good deal? Like you're educated enough now that you know a good deal when you smell it from a mile away. So how'd you get there?
Well, I think there are a couple main parts you have to have. Like one, you have to be able to really, like, you have to know what market value is. And that just takes like being plugged in and nerdy and seeing, like, looking on Reverb, looking on eBay, looking on, Facebook Marketplace and seeing what people are asking for them. Also knowing that people ask crazy prices. You can ask whatever you want. The most helpful data you can ever find is what things are actually selling for. So one of the easiest tricks, like, let's say you found a guitar that you want to buy and you're really interested in it. The first thing that I do is I'm going to look at the Vintage Guitar Price Guide. Do you have a copy of one of those?
I don't. You know what's funny? I think I've maybe only seen one of those once when I was in a studio. Like it was sitting on the coffee table kind of thing.
Mine's around here somewhere. But it is like I look through that every single day. And I still think they're incredibly relevant because they're only printed once a year. They don't hit the volatility. So like look at what Skylarks, like look at the Gibson, the GA5. Mm-hmm. And then look what happened after Rhett put his video out about it, or look at any pedal that Josh Scott talks about. Like, yeah, like you're just, there's some insider trading on those, or maybe there should be. That's what we should do. I know I made a video on the PV Classic 20, like the little combos, and like with my little bit of influence in the guitar world, and I didn't mean to do it. I bought it for $200, made a video about it. And then people were like, "Oh, they're so cool." I listed mine and sold it for $450. Like, so that's one way. Make a moderately successful YouTube channel. And but yeah, I think first is knowing what things are worth. So having a price guide. They're like $30 a year, and they're really helpful because they also they will give you all the details that you might not know. Like they'll say. They'll give you those details, like they had a neck relief issue. I'm trying to think of an example. So I was looking at my D17 today that I just got on the Gulf Coast a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know it gave me actual production numbers, like how many of these guitars did they make per year.
Oh wow.
And so it showed me like they only made one of them in 1911, and then they didn't make another one until 1953, and they made 23 of them. And then they reissued them from 2001 to 2005, and they only made about 230 of them. And so all of a sudden I'm like, and I found one of those 230. Like, that's crazy.
That is pretty crazy.
So that's super helpful. The other one is look for eBay completed listings, because there's still tons of stuff that's sold on eBay. And so do you know how to do completed listings?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's like, I mean, that's, yeah. That will show you like what people are actually paying. And then you'll go to Reverb and you'll look at the price guide and you'll be like, wow, that's 40% higher than everywhere else.
Yeah.
Reverb is really expensive.
Yeah. I mean, and dude, I bought a Klon Centaur in 2002.
Oh yeah.
And for $300 right from Bill Finnegan. Yeah. And I sold it in 2015 for $1,500. And that's how I bought my second Sir.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, it's an overdrive pedal, man. It's like there's this mystique and there's this thing about it that it's just like, but can it be duplicated again? And I'm like, dude, it's an overdrive pedal. It's a boost. It's a clean boost. It's an overdrive. It's, if you ask me, because I A beat them, The Wampler Tumnus.
Yeah.
Spot on.
So my friend Bo had a Tumnus, and I'm like that because at that time I had one of the JHS modded Soul Foods.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got this for $100, and what's crazy is like you could tell a difference, but it's pretty close, and
close enough to like not spend $5,000 like Tyler from Music Is Win, but like that was an interesting video. But man, like
and just $30 one, the got the one from Wish, and he's like, it doesn't suck.
But man, like Brian Wampler's pedal is like, I was shocked because I bought the Klon back then. I still had it. I was thinking about selling it, and I was like, I'm gonna buy Brian's pedal, and I'm gonna AB him before I decide to sell it. And then I just plugged them in, blindfolded myself in a way, and like just closed my eyes like I was in a gig, and I was like, this thing is exactly the same. And I think that Bill would probably be like, yeah, why are you guys all freaking out about this pedal?
Because it's like it's probably pretty insulting to any engineer that's built any overdrive pedal in the last 20 years when people are like, those are terrible, like you should get a TS9 because they're $1,500.
Right.
You're like those engineers, like they work so hard and they're like so meticulous. To be an engineer in general, you have to care about the details, and so they're not going to make a pedal that they don't like or sounds good or isn't like what they're trying to do. Like I have a Tube Screamer Mini, and I just got it because I have a small board and I like a Tube Screamer, and it's like it's everything I want. I love Tube Screamers. It sounds like a screamer.
Yeah. It's weird. Like it's funny. So yeah, Terry's like, how dare you insult the Klon gods? And he's a friend, so I know he's kidding. But and I'm not throwing shade at Klon because it's a dope. And if that's you want to spend the money to get it, man, get it. It's a dope pedal. It's just like if you can't afford to spend the bread on that, man, there's options galore.
I would point back to 2005, 6, and 7 in like 50s crazy color strats. So I would chase down in the mountains, find any old Strat I could find, and the guy that I worked for would buy them for like $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, and it started moving up. And what would happen is we'd sell them to somebody, and then a couple of years later, they'd be like, "Hey, I still have that. I think I'm going to move out of it." So we'd buy it back at 12, and then we sell it, and all of a sudden you get to where they're like, we were selling them for 40 and 50 grand. Like just, and the thing is, they're not rare. And Fender, and they're not that hard to make, and so like Fender made as many of them as they could, and then the financial crisis happened, and like, I mean, the problem is most of those guitar dealers got stuck. Like they were getting high on their own supply. They'd sell them, they'd buy them back at crazy prices, and so I think now I'm not saying I think the Klon is going to crash, but I think at some point it's going like the market's going to correct on those, and like all of a sudden people are going to drop down to 2,500. Like to me, I'm like above 1,000. Like you look 15 years ago at like original TS808s, and the original TS9s. I remember hitting $1,000 and being like, this is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's at some point it's like, because part of the Music Is Win is like the clickbait component to it. Like we all knew, well, a couple million of us are going to watch this and he's going to make enough ad revenue to cover,
Right.
But it's tricky. I do think I love the Klon circuit. I think it's because you basically have like the Screamer circuit, the DoD 250, a micro amp. That's more of a clean boost. Like I love that there's a new idea that showed up in our lifetime. Because I think that's the thing that gets me a lot of times is the reissue culture. Is like all the best stuff's behind you, and they might make new versions of it, but they'll be like the newer they are, the more old they are. And I love when like a whole new idea, when something changes how you think about your tone and play. That's the best part for me. Yeah.
And honestly, man, I think that the Cornerstone Gladio is going to be like a Klon type thing at some point. Cool. It's one of the pedals that has impressed me the most that I bought in 2020. That and that Chase Bliss Automaton, I bought that too, but I got a crazy good deal on it. I wouldn't have been able to buy it if I didn't, but like that thing is next level stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And that's like, think about like, that's the like Danger Will Robinson forward thinking machine that Chase Bliss is, you know, it's like, it's just like mind blowingly so forward thinking and so innovative. It's awesome.
Dude, did you see Jason Isbell tweeted a couple weeks ago and he said, he's like, what'd you do over lockdown? Oh, you wrote America's next great work. I figured out how to use 2 Chase Bliss pedals.
I did not see that. That's awesome.
So good. Yeah, it's like,
oh man, I got a question for you here from Jason
sure.
about replacing Stratneck. You know, and the brands that should look at is never just replaced a neck.
Warmouth or Mighty Might are both pretty straight on. If you're really particular, Warmouth does not build necks like Fender does. Mighty Might's a lot closer, but Warmouth, especially the contour coming out of the neck into the headstock. But either of those are pretty reliable. I would be wary of like, you can get a bunch on Amazon for like $85 or $100. They are hit or miss. I built a guitar a couple of years ago for a friend with one from Amazon. It was okay. But I think usually you're going to like, it all comes down to fretwork. That's the thing. Like most of those, like, unless you're really good at fretwork or are willing to spend basically as much as you're putting in the neck to get it set up and playing really well. But yeah, that's a good question. That's the thing. Everyone should play around with parts casters, like, because that will save you so much money. Figuring out what guitars you really like, where you're like, I think I'd like an HSS Strat. Way easier to do on a Mexican than to spend way too much money on, you know, an American Standard or something. Yeah.
I never thought that I would like the HSS format, but when I bought that first Sir and I popped that Pete Thornbucker in there. So good, dude. Like screamingly good. Like I went on my buddy's channel because he had a Silver Sky and he was like, I want you to play this versus your Sir to see how you feel about it. And for me, I just didn't, I mean, the guitar felt great. The PRS felt great. It's just I'm used to like bigger frets, like jumbo frets, and that the radius and how that guitar is built, I guess it's just not my jam.
Cause it's like a super vintage spec. Even though it's like cutting edge new, it's a pretty small radius, right?
Yeah, it's 7 1/4, right?
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was that whole thing about like the guitar fretting out, you know, in the upper register and stuff, and like we were trying to do it and we couldn't get it to choke out. So, you know, if you keep it set up and you keep it nice, it's okay, you know. And John Mayer was talking about that too, and like. When I first released it, he was like, yeah, you know, we had some issues here and there. We tweaked it. We fixed it. You know, it's okay.
But it kind of begs the question. So like so Jason Isbell is one of my absolute favorite guitar players and singers and songwriters. And a couple of years ago, I played one of his signatures at Groon and I was like, oh man, I really don't like this guitar. Like so much about it I don't like. And,
what brand does he have a signature guitar?
It's this is a Martin.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So just this year, they're releasing the Mexican Fender, the Isbell Telecaster, but this is his D18, and it just has like a giant neck, but it doesn't feel like a vintage neck, and it's satin finish, and it's like weird, weird tuners. But it begs the whole question of like, you love your Guitar Hero, should you play your guitar, or should those companies sell a full spec, like? Does everyone need the same spec that this one guitar player? Because that's the whole thing is like, there are not a whole lot of John Mayers in the world, you know, like there aren't a whole lot of Jason Isbells, and what they're able to do and what they prefer probably is not going to be the thing that everybody else would want. Yeah, that's just a bigger question than you and I get paid to answer.
What are your thoughts on, so, you know, I know you've been talking a lot about the Gibson thing and it's been like watching a car wreck in the past few years with Gibson, unfortunately. Yeah. Like, but like, you know, comparatively speaking, you know, between Gibson and PRS, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if you're looking for an American-made, inspired, innovated, like cool humbucker guitar, get a PRS, get a Novo, get a Collings. There are you know a bunch of options. So like I don't have any like ill will against Gibson. I'm not like A lot of people with my video last week were like, I'm surprised that you did a hit piece on Gibson, or it was so negative. I was like, I don't feel like it's negative. I just came at it from like a marketing and sales side and just said like, hey, like you're not giving your customer any place to live in the story that your brand is telling. Like you're just saying like, we are awesome and we almost lost it, but we came back and it's, we dug our, pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps, and it leaves customers saying like, my uncle likes your guitars and I kind of want to be a good guitar player. Like, I guess I'll buy a Gibson, or, anyway, I made some people grumpy with that one.
I mean, it's not, I don't feel like it was a hit piece. I mean, I think that it's good to hold some of these big companies accountable too. Like, like you're releasing a guitar for Dave Mustaine, but that dude's like, I mean, they're not like, is Megadeth doing anything anymore? Like, I know that guy was really sick. Yeah. And everything. So I don't know what's going on in that world, but like I bought the Derek Trucks signature guitar
because he's like cool and exciting and like modern, and like people our age are listening to him.
Yeah, and it played great.
I think the Marcus King is a home run. But apparently they haven't shipped any of them yet. One of my friends and followers works at a shop in Nashville, and they have 4 of them on order, and like they're made in Memphis, and they haven't even made it to Nashville yet.
Oh wow, yeah, it's I mean, it's really cool, man. I think we're living in an age where gear is,
oh yeah,
we're the platinum age. I say it every episode basically, but like it's true. Like there's so many options. There's like, I could spend a whole rabbit hole day going down that thing, looking at different companies and different gear, and we didn't have that when we were kids. Like. It wasn't a thing. Like it was Fender, Gibson, Martin, maybe Taylor coming up the wings at some point. There wasn't that much available to like have options because everybody, I mean, like look at what Mule's doing, like it's like totally bringing back to the forefront an instrument that has not been in the forefront in popular music. And they're also doing these metal guitars. Like I know Trussart's been doing that for a long time, but like, it's a bit different. The guitars, I don't think, sound like Trussart's.
Yeah. And they're also like their brand and their aesthetic and their messaging is really cool and helpful. It's not like there's a reason that Beard is still like, I mean, Beard is an amazing brand, and it is totally aimed at like modern bluegrass, kind of blues players, where instead this came in for like, they're aiming at electric guitar players coming into resonator and blues. And I love those. I also think Wide Sky, that's another account that I will follow everyone, and I'll like every picture. And it's I think Mule, because he's in Michigan, right? He worked for Husson Dalton here in Virginia for 5 or 6 years. Mark Dalton has nothing but great things to say about just like how good of a guitar builder he is. And that's really high praise.
Yeah, and I like his aesthetic for his instruments, and I like his attention to detail on the necks, because like apparently, I mean, I had him on, I had Matt on last season, and we talked a lot about like neck carve and whatnot, and basically he's carved so many necks now, it's like it's just second nature. And he was talking about it's not a C shape, it's not a V shape, it's a freaking hand shape. He's like, your hand is not the shape of a V or a C or any of that stuff. He's like, what we try to do is build necks that fit the shape of a hand. So
why has no one ever said that? Like,
I don't know, but like, I mean, I would love to try one of his electrics, because there's no dealers around here. Nobody has that. And like, right now it's like what, an 8 month to a year wait to get his instruments.
And that's the like beautiful part of right now, but also hard. Like, I mean, Husson Dalton, they said that they could build guitars full time every day for 3 years and not catch up.
Yeah.
Like they are, and like Gibson has sold more guitars. Martin, every guitar company has sold more guitars ever. And I mean, that's awesome. Have
you ever played an Olsen?
Oh yes.
How are they?
I thought I wanted to build guitars, and I got really nerdy into how you build guitars. And I used to call Jim once a week and ask him about guitars. And I asked him if I could come work for him. And he said that I could, and we were figuring out the details, but it was like, he's like, well, I can't pay you. And then he also, he'd been burned pretty hard by a guy who worked for him for a couple of years and then ended up making like exact Olsen style guitars. I don't have copies, but like he moved 500 miles away and was calling on the same customers to see if they wanted to buy. And so he basically said, like, I'll teach you how to play, but I can't pay you along the way. And then afterwards, he wanted to either figure out licensing or, you know, a way to do it. And and I also know, like, I love guitars and I'm an okay woodworker, but I'm not detail oriented enough to build. But I love Olsen guitars. I think that's one of, like, in Groon, that's the place I usually, that back wall that's all the weird stuff. Like I'm always looking for Olsens or Leprenzis. Those are two of my favorite, like, pretty unknown guitars that I wish more people knew about.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I've only been in Groons once, and it was like, it was the week my wife and I went there for the long weekend in Nashville, and she, like, was cool and let me go to some guitar shops, and she came with me. But, like, man, what a crazy city full of so much history and, like. Man, there's a couple questions in here I want to ask you, and then we can do lightning round, and then I have a funny question to ask you too. So I think this is, Terry, I think this is in reference to the Isbell one.
Yeah.
Maybe? So
once that, it's pricey. Like, it's $1,500. So I have only bought like 3 new guitars in my life. So I'm not usually the one to ask on new guitars, but I think and Mark, I wonder what your thoughts on this. I think that modern Mexican tellies are as good or better than 90s American stuff. Like, I just think all guitars are so much better that it would be hard to lose with any new Mexican Strat or telly.
I would agree. I would concur. I've played a couple and I've been very pleasantly surprised in how they feel and how they sound and everything. Yeah. And, you know, whatever, you can change out pickups if you're not happy with pickups, but I mean, does it feel good? You know, I have a 90, I bought it in 97. I think it's like a Shoreline Gold Strat, American Strat. Cool. It was the Roadhouse.
Oh, cool.
When they released those. And I put at some point.
Is that H8? Or no? No, that's the Powerhouse. Was the humbuckers. Is yours 3 singles?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's a great, I have 13s on that thing right now. And it's, but I had
13s tuned down. It's like a normal man's 10.
That one is in standard tuning, believe it or not.
Oh boy, never mind.
Yeah. No, but the telly that I have that you've seen me play, that white telly that's a Sir.
Oh yeah.
That's 16 to 62, I think. And then I was playing 19 to 68 on my open C guitars, but I dropped that down to 17 to 64.
Okay. So. How does it, I'm sure that intonation isn't a problem, but how is it not a problem is my question.
Dude, I don't know. They feel great. That telly is like my favorite instrument right now. I would pick that up over any instrument that I have in my arsenal. So there's just something about it. There's some magic in that guitar. Like, the pickups just sound great. In that tuning, it just it's like it just loves it. It just gives it a big hug, you know.
That's like between like Joey's tone and like Ariel's tone, that like super fat, really warm, just a little bit of overdrive,
throaty.
Like, I mean, that is like, I think that's the tone of like the last 5 years, and I think that's going to be the tone moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Because I used to have a guitar teacher. So I made this really drastic switch from playing in metal bands to going hardcore, like into fingerstyle acoustic guitar. And it all happened. It was one conversation with the guy that worked at the guitar shop. And he was leaving to open another shop, and he recommended that I get hired. I'm eternally thankful to Randy for recommending that I get that job when I was 18. But one of the things he said was, he's like, what I have seen in people playing guitar is the guys that played in 80s metal, as they get older, all of their guitar tone gets less gain and more headroom. And it's like everybody gets cleaner. And he's like, I wonder why. And he said, like, his thought was like, as people learn, well, I guess his wisdom coming out of it was get your guitar tone to where you have nothing to hide behind, but everything to show. I think that got in my head because I was like, we spent so much time and energy writing all these like shreddy at the gates, riffy, death metal stuff.
Yeah.
Thrash metal. But then you're playing in a basement. It's all washed out. Most people are drunk. Like, like no one is thinking like those are really tasty harmonies.
Did you play classically? Like, did you play classical guitar for a while? Like the whole PMI thing? And
no.
Mm-hmm.
No. So we, both of my guitar teachers growing up had classical backgrounds. So I have a lot of, especially when I got into fingerstyle, I have a lot of like more proper technique, which I have ignored and run into the dirt.
We all do that, man. That's fun.
Yeah, but then so from there is when like I was like, I'm gonna play super clean, I'm gonna play acoustic, and I'm gonna not use a pick. And that's when I got really into fingerstyle. And so I grew my fingernails out and then started getting made fun of for having long fingernails, which still kind of happened.
Well,
I asked my wife if I should do a video. I've asked a couple people if I should do a video about like having long fingernails for playing guitar, and everyone has been like, nope, that's gross, don't do it.
I can see that, but at the same time, it is kind of like a helpful situation if you want to implement that into your style. You know what I mean? Because it's not for me, but like, if you're getting into playing classical guitar, it's part for the course, isn't it? I mean, you kind of have to do that stuff.
It's an entirely different tone. It's like you can get to where you have like loud percussive like a pick just from your fingers.
Oh yeah.
But
not even pick that hard.
Yeah.
Like you don't even have to like hit the string that hard. It's all about how you attack it,
Exactly.
It's crazy. Charlie Hunter taught me that. Charlie Hunter, I took one lesson with Charlie Hunter one time, and he was like asking me to play something, and I played, and then I put my pick down and I was doing something. He's like, "Oh, what was that?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "What did you just do? That sounded rad." And I was like, "I put my pick down." He's like, "Don't use a pick anymore." I was like, "What are you talking about? Don't use a pick anymore." He's like, "Dude, that's your voice. What I just heard there, that's you, entirely you, all you. Like when you were using a pick, it sounded like a guitar player. But what I just heard was you." And I was like,
that's the best. When you can get to those, like the thin spots of like, because like the best guitars get out of the way. Like the best guitars you don't think about. Like it's just creating. Like, and that's what humans are made to do. We're just meant to make stuff. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Dude, Jeremy, we could talk for like 3 hours, dude.
I'm in.
So I wanted to ask you a funny question before we do the lightning round. I had this thought today. Can you think of a TV show that's not a musical TV show?
Yeah.
That randomly has a musical number in it, that the song was so great, you were like, I love this.
I can. It might not be like the most creative answer, but when Andy, The Office isn't overtly musical. When Andy sings "I Will Remember You" on his J45, it's like such good, because he's such a great player. It's such good acoustic guitar tone, and it's just like it's a song that should be funny, and it should be like, but it's like also really thoughtful, and it's because it's also one of the things that you just said. Like, I think we get ourselves in trouble as guitar players when we just imitate other players. Like, I'm going to play the way I've heard it on the record. And I think you're much better served to like interpret that into your style. So the reason I love that moment in The Office is like, it's this like silly moment, but it's sweet. And that's kind of Andy's character. And he's really thoughtful. But he also is kind of tone deaf and doesn't get the moment where you're like, oh, Sarah McLachlan, man.
Yeah.
But he interprets it, instead of playing it in what she plays it, I think in C, he plays it in F. Nope. Yeah. He plays it in F. It's just, anyway, it's this weird moment where it's like, it's a dumb and silly moment, but I love it. Like I will, when I have a J45, that's one of the songs I will play is like the way Andy plays,
Yeah. Terry loved that. Oh man. It's funny. We have I think my wife and my kid have a love-hate relationship with this, but I love Community.
Oh, we're just watching it. We're just into the second season. I've never seen it.
Just wait. There's an episode. All I'm going to say, there's an episode with puppets and a hot air balloon, and there's an amazing pop song. That's all I'm going to say. That's enough. All right. You ready to do lightning round? Get down.
Let's do it.
All right. So a little bit of suspense there with the 105 BPM provided by a metronome that I have on my phone. So you know the drill here. You can explain your answers if you want. Okay. You don't have to. You can just burn through them. It's up to you. First question, always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney.
Almond butter or peanut butter?
Almond butter, but only if it's like the one that doesn't get oily. It doesn't have like this chunk of oil on top and then like the hard rock of, yeah.
Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't know why I didn't explain McCartney, but I did explain my peanut butter.
You love almond butter, bro. That's all it is too. Yeah.
But for McCartney, I'll go back because this is one that I've heard for weeks and I want to like, I struggle with the like morose, like the downtrodden like artist type, like the John Lennon. And I love the like fun, playful, dynamic, like effervescent component of McCartney. Like I think it's like if you want music that makes you feel good and happy, I'm not always that way because there are some brooding artists I really like. But between those two, I like McCartney.
What's your favorite Beatles tune?
That's a good question. I didn't listen to the Beatles growing up. It wasn't until I was probably 20 that I started listening to them in the guitar shop. Jeez. I love, like, my kids love when I play Obla Di Obla Die. And it's just like such a fun, like, because I have a 6, a 5, and a 1-year-old. And so that song plays really well for kids.
Yeah, that's a good audience. Yellow Submarine is a good audience too for that.
Octopus's Garden. My kids love it. It's super fun. Like I like the weirdness. A couple of years ago, there was a movie theater in Louisiana that was playing Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the movie. And it was awesome. Like seeing it in an IMAX blew my mind, where you're like, it's like Billy Gibbs and like, it's if you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
Okay. And dude, if you ever get the chance, I don't know if you've ever seen the tribute band Rain, the Beatles tribute band. Next level, dude. So good.
Did you ever see that band? Oh, sorry, you finish.
Oh no, just that. I mean, when I saw those guys, my drummer is good friends with those guys because my drummer's from Reno. He's transplanted out here. And so all those guys are from Reno, and they all used to play together in like bar gigs and stuff. But dude, at the end, like I'm watching this guy that's playing Paul McCartney. He sounds like a bird when he sings. He's got the Paul energy, and I'm just like, I just want to give that dude a hug. Like he just is like embracing this character, and this voice is just coming out of him. Was so astounding.
Did you ever see 1964? It was a tribute band, but they had like weird licensing to license the artistic performances of concerts. And so they would do like the same timing, the same lighting. They'd make mistakes. Like it was the whole, like, this is what it was like to see a concert. And like, even the guy, he was right-handed. That was Paul, but ended up having to learn how to play left-handed.
That's like this dude. He did the same thing. It's crazy. When he played bass, he played left-handed, but when he played like Yesterday and stuff, he played right-handed.
Got it. So those guys, because I was working at the guitar shop, it's like a Saturday afternoon. I'm by myself at the guitar shop, and a guy comes in. I was like, "Hey, man, I'm sure you've heard this before, but you look exactly like John Lennon." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I played John Lennon in the band 1964." I'm like, what? And then Paul McCartney walks in, like,
"Oh man, that's so great." All right, ready? Let's continue on here.
I hope that's the same thing for Blink-182 when we're old.
You can start that, man.
Should do it.
Yeah. Rosewood or Ebony Fingerboard?
Oh, that's a good question. Rosewood. Well, no. It depends. There's so much. I would say almost always Rosewood.
Okay.
With J45s.
Old school or Anchorman?
Old school.
Okay. Tropical islands or in the mountains?
In the mountain.
Okay. Taylor or Martin?
Oh, easy, Martin.
Okay. Gandalf or Dumbledore?
Ooh. We just reread the books and rewatched the movies. Dumbledore.
Okay. Thumb pick or thumb?
Thumb.
Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
All right. And the last one, this is sometimes super hard for people. Sometimes it's easy. Think of an album. Doesn't have to be your favorite album.
Yeah.
Think of an album that you could erase your memory.
Yeah. I heard this last week.
Yep.
So one that I could hear, right, is so I could hear for the first time again.
Yep.
It'd be Neil Young's Harvest.
Okay. Why?
So good. Because it's just like such powerful songwriting. I heard that record when I was 13, probably for the first time. My mom had it on a record, and I sat down with big headphones and I listened to it in the living room. I looked at the cover and I looked through the artwork, which that's a whole the physical experience of listening to music is really amazing. Mm-hmm. But I remember listening to this song about The Needle and the Damage Done. I heard you knocking at my cellar door saying, "Hey baby, can I have some more?" It's about a guy whose friend is addicted to heroin, and he's asking him in the middle of the night, and something in my 14-year-old brain was I get that.
There's got to be a nostalgia to it for you as well if your mom listened to that stuff.
So the other thing, when I was 20, my mom died. And so that there were many things that my mom and I shared in common and just shared a love for. And that's one of them is Neil Young. And also Tony Rice. That was really sad when Tony Rice died, because that was the last concert I saw with my mom before she died. With Tony Rice and Alison Krauss.
Oh, that's a great show.
It was so good. Man, I will say Tony Rice soloed for 25 minutes and I was bored to tears.
At some point you're like, dude. I am so glad that you said Marvel. This is how nerdy I am. So this is my book that I write all my At Home with Mark stuff in. And I'm a huge nerd. Obviously, look at my stupid Pop Funkos back there.
But I was going to say it's not Marvel because of I like Iron Man's probably my favorite of the MCU now. But I love X-Men in particular. I remember we used to set the VHS to record. We'd set the VCR to record while we're at baseball on Saturday morning. So we'd come back and watch Rogue and Dr. X and Beast and all them.
Man, it's X-Men was never. I mean, I've read a bunch of X-Men stuff too. I have the Marvel Unlimited app. Every night when I go to bed, I'm basically reading comic books. But there's so many, dude. There's so many good stories and art, and then people just don't think about. My wife is always I'm just glad you're reading, because it does keep your brain moving. But man, this will be my last nerdy comic book thing. One of the best comic books I've ever read was a Batman comic, and it was called The Court of Owls.
Okay.
And, for any people who are into comic books or want to read and haven't read that story, the art in that and the story, at one point you're reading it. I don't want to ruin it too much, but the book moves and it's it's really good. And that's the one thing I'll say for DC. Batman is my guy for DC, obviously.
Yeah.
But you can't beat Marvel right now, man. With even WandaVision. Have you watched any of that?
Dude, it's so good.
Really good.
I'm even my wife, who's not into him as much, she's wait, what happened in the snap? And what happened with where are we in the timeline?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
Dude, it's really good. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna let us both get back to our families. Jeremy, thank you so much, buddy. It's so great hanging with you, man.
Yeah, dude, I love this. I watched Pete's a couple weeks ago and just got so much out of y'all's conversation.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Very cool. Well, you and I, as soon as this COVID stupid stuff is over, we'll hang. We'll definitely get together for sure.
Yeah. We're so close. We should go see if we can do a tour of the Prs Factory.
Oh, dude, yeah.
I've never done that. So
I have connections there. I'm actually a PRS artist. But yeah, we could do that for sure at some point.
You could also keep going up 81 and go to the Martin Factory, do the tour.
Love that. That would be dope.
I've never done that, but I feel like I would not want to go home.
You and I both, but we'll do it, man. We'll do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out. Next week is going to be different. My daughter's birthday is next Wednesday, so I'm not doing a show on Wednesday. I'm doing one on Thursday with Eric Finland, who's the keyboard player in Eric Krasno's band. Friend of mine, also a Berkeley alum. He's a killing player. So stop on by for that. But everybody, thank you so much. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time.